changed before she started seeing them. It began in second grade. A normal morning, just like any other. Elle sat in the back of the classroom, doodling stars in the margins of her notebook. The teacher's voice faded into background noise as she gazed out the window. That's when she saw it. A man, pale, expressionless, standing just outside the school fence. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, his arms hanging limply at his sides. His eyes, empty and dark, were locked onto hers. Elle blinked. The man was now inside the playground. Her breath caught in her throat. No one had seen him move. He wasn't walking, just appearing, closer each time. She turned to her classmate, heart hammering. "Do you see?" The girl gave her a confused look. "See what?" Elle's stomach twisted. She turned back to the window. The man was gone. That was the first time. The first time she saw something no one else could see. Elle thought it was a dream, a trick of the light. But the sightings got worse. At home, faces peered at her from the hallway mirror. In class, dark shapes crouched in the corners of the room. No one else noticed. Her parents assumed she had an overactive imagination. The kids at school called her weird, so Elle stopped talking about it. She stopped talking, period. By middle school, her silence became unsettling. Teachers called her parents. She doesn't engage with the other students. She just stares at the walls. She writes strange things in her notebooks. Her mother found one of them. It was filled with drawings of figures standing behind people. People who weren't supposed to be there. People with too many eyes. Too many mouths. Too many arms. Her mother's voice shook. "Elle, what is this?" Elle only stared at her. She couldn't say it. Because every time she tried, they wouldn't let her. Her parents took her to a therapist. Dr. Reeves was kind, gentle. He spoke softly and smiled too much. His office smelled like cinnamon and old books, and a small clock on the shelf ticked too slowly. "Elle," he said, folding his hands, "your parents are worried about you." Elle stared at him. "They say you've stopped talking, that you seem distracted. Do you want to tell me why?" She shook her head. Dr. Reeves nodded, unfazed. "That's okay. You don't have to speak. You can write it down." He slid a notepad across the table. Elle hesitated, then picked up the pen. Her hand trembled as she wrote 2 words. "They watch." Dr. Reeves frowned. "Who watches, Elle?" Elle took a deep breath. And then, suddenly, her hands wouldn't move. Something clawed at the back of her skull. A force, cold, heavy, suffocating, was pressing down on her. Her vision darkened at the edges. Dr. Reeves' voice seemed distant. "Elle?" Her fingers gripped the pen too tightly. Her knuckles turned white. Something was behind him. She tried to scream, but her throat locked up. It was watching. It knew she was trying to tell. The air in the room grew thick, heavy, wrong. The clock on the shelf stopped ticking, and then every single book in the room flew off the shelves at once. Dr. Reeves jolted, eyes wide as papers whipped through the air. The room shook, the lights flickered, and the walls they began to bleed. Dark, inky veins spread across the paint, oozing down like something was alive inside them. Dr. Reeves stood, stumbling back. "Elle, what's happening?" She couldn't answer. She couldn't breathe. Because she saw it. Standing right behind him. Tall. Crooked. A thing made of twisting, writhing shadows, its grin stretching too wide. And its fingers-long, jagged things were reaching for him. The lights exploded. Everything went black. When Elle woke up, she was in her bedroom. Her mother sat beside her, eyes swollen from crying. Her father stood near the doorway, face pale. She opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. The words were gone. Dr. Reeves was dead. A heart attack, they said. Found in his office, surrounded by fallen books. But Elle knew better, because she saw it happen. She saw the way the shadows took him. and she knew they would never let her tell. The house wasn't safe anymore. The shadows followed her home. They whispered to her at night. She saw them in her mirror, their mouths moving too fast, too frantic, too wrong. Her parents noticed her worsening state. They sat her down at the kitchen table. Her mother placed a hand on hers, eyes filled with desperation. "Elle, please, we just want to help you." Elle wanted to warn them. She wanted to scream, "They're here, they're listening," but she couldn't, because as her mother spoke, something moved behind her. Something dark. Something grinning. Her father noticed Elle's expression. He frowned. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" The thing behind them tilted its head. It raised one long, bony finger to its lips. "Shh!" Elle's stomach twisted. She knew what was about to happen. Her parents shouldn't have asked. Now it knew they were trying to help. Now it would take them too. The kitchen lights flickered. The walls groaned. A cold wind howled through the house, though every window was shut. Her mother gasped, jerking her hand away from Elle's. "Did you feel that?" Her father stood quickly. "What the hell?" And then the shadows rushed forward. Elle didn't look away. She wanted to. She wanted to, so badly. But she watched as the darkness wrapped around them, pulling them into something unseen. She watched as her mother's face twisted in terror. As her father tried to run, but the shadows were faster. As their bodies vanished into the dark. And then, in an instant, the house was silent. They were gone. Elle sat alone at the kitchen table. Her parents' chairs were empty. The house was still. She knew no one would believe her. When the police came, they would say her parents vanished without a trace. Another mystery. Another unsolved case. And Elle? Elle would stay quiet. She would never speak of what she saw, because they were still watching, waiting. And she knew if she ever tried to tell again, she would be next.